Boom! I still love that intro. It hypes me up. It gets me going. Real quick, everybody who's watching tonight, if you are listening and you hear me, please let me know in the comments here that audio is good. A little bit of last minute change here, last minute, because of some issues we had going on. But we're here. We're live. Tonight is just me, and tonight we're talking about books, and particularly video side. But I do have some audio books to kind of go over here, and I just want to talk about these books, kind of get them out there, get them to the community, get the guys know out there, give my 2 cents on them. I'd love for you to drop some comments here if you know any books that are good, that are useful, that you've read that you want to share as well. Since tonight it's just me, as always, I will send the invite link in the chats there. I'm going to do this right now as we're talking here. I'm going to post that. If you want to join me tonight, you're always welcome to come on the show with me. You'll be live to the community, and we turn into a podcast in the back end. So I'll be as very descriptive as I can visually with what we're going through. And as you can see, my office here at home has gotten a little bit of an improvement. There's a bookshelf behind me, and there's another one you guys can't see over there, but we'll get to some of those hopefully today. I have a lot of books. These aren't all of them, but these are kind of the ones that pertain to tonight's topic. So I'm just going to grab books randomly from the shelf here and kind of give you my 2 cents about them, what I read, what I liked, what I didn't like, where they are. And then as we're talking, I might try to find specific ones. There's some books that I won't go over, and some I think that are very good and useful books for AV. So I'll start at the top here. So as we do this, if you're tuning in on the back end of this, there is visually a bookshelf behind me. In front of me is, obviously the camera, the studio, the laptops, the audio. Again, real quick, if you guys hear me and everything's good, just give me a thumbs up in the comments, or let me know that everything's good on that side. It is just me tonight, so I just want to make sure that audio is going through, since this will be a 60-minute session. If we run out of time, I will do a part 2 to this and, continue on the book process here. But I'm going to start with a couple books. And again, I'm just going to turn around and grab some. Obviously, I have a collection of different books here. So I'm going to grab this one real quick because it just caught my eye. It's a little bit of a bigger book here, but the Event Safety guide here. I got this a couple years ago. This is from the Event Safety Alliance. Pretty good organization. You can get this on Amazon, wherever you'd like. It's a white book here, says the Event Safety Guide. It's a little bit outdated probably by now. This book was published recently, within 5 years, I would say. What this book was really good for is I was in-house at the hotel as a director, and we were doing a lot of events, and I was kind of the lead for this. And what this does is a lot of crowd control and just safety things in the AV specifically. What's really cool to take note that is if you're in the Vegas area and you have OSHA 10 laws or things to follow along that nature, the Event Safety Alliance has some rules and regulations according to specifically to Vegas and other things in our industry, including with the COVID that came out. They partnered with OSHA. They partnered with the WHO, World Health Organization, to create COVID stuff specifically for the AV community. And what's really cool about Safety Alliance is that information, if it's a universal health information that gets out there, they post it on the website for you guys to use to your advantage. And if you ever want to refer as an event planner or a technician or director, project manager to a venue or anything about safety concerns like that, this is a great resource to have. This book was really good in kind of getting me up to speed on a lot of that stuff. The Event Safety Guide, really, really good. Kind of quick read. I wouldn't say quick read. It was a little bit of a time consumption. But if you want to know about fire marshals, the rules and regulations for some of that stuff, there's some general guidelines in here. Obviously, it changes by states, but changes by state. But it gives you a very good general guideline. The book's about $50. They may have it for free. They do have a free resource for some other things. They do have a free resource for a couple other things. As Window is phenomenal at doing, it is trying to do an update right now as I am doing this live. So apologize for the stops there. But this book, again, fire egress, if you guys don't know what that is, between outdoor events or indoors events, it's a great little thing to understand and comprehend, as well as some basic stuff about spacing between staging and the bottom of the stage to the front of the stuff. This is really good to have in your back pocket. Just read this, get the knowledge for that. If you are a producer or a planner or you're doing anything in Vectorworks, there's a lot of great information in this called the Event Safety Guide. I'll hold it up for a few more seconds. A guide to health, safety, and welfare at live entertainment events in the United States. I will say the main focus was of this, which again, I read the parts that I needed to read, and I refer to this when I need to. A lot of it was for outdoor events that we were doing at the time at the Fontainebleau in particular, and making sure we were in regulations to what needs to happen for particularly our industry, which is always kind of this weird gray area. So again, highly recommend this book. Again, I just got it off the shelf. Any questions about it, let me know. Again, in the comments here, there is a drop for you if you want to tune in or join me tonight. You have your own book and your own references. Good to go on that. I'm going to go have another book from the shelf here. Event Safety Guide is from the Event Safety Alliance. Very good book. I highly recommend it if you are in that leadership position and you just want to speed up your work process. Instead of finding out and being reactive, you can be a little more proactive with this book. Another book I'll grab here too is How Video Works. This is an old book, actually. I'll hold this one up. How Video Works. This breaks down all these nitty-gritties about video, between refresh rates, resolutions, the way a cable runs, the width of the cables, how this affects signal flow, DHCP, networking. And I'm just going through this drop frame rate code, all those little intricacies that we see on job sites. This book dives into all of that. So how a pixel works, how when you go from 1080 to 4K and you blow up an image, how that works, and what's going on actually with the individual pixels. If you're going from a big image to a smaller image, what you're doing again on the pixel side. Some of the things that engineers do to kind of manipulate that content. There's a great out of phase for audio. And again, I'm flipping to the book here. Some lighting positions, some big information on that. Refresh rate, progressive versus interlacing here. Sample signal rates. And again, I should probably show you as I'm looking through this. So chroma subsampling. So a whole section on 444, 422, 441. This book is really, really good. And again, I still refer to a lot of these books. That's why I had them on the shelf. So bit rate. So here's an example right here. This is super useful for the industry right now. So if you look at table 15.1, right? And again, this is the How Video Works book. I got this a few years ago. So 1.5 megabytes a second is the bit rate or an application for YouTube at 480p. And it goes all the way up to 40 megabytes is 1080p Blu-ray DVD player. So these are great little numbers to know if you're doing streaming. Whoops. If you're doing streaming or anything like that, these are great little numbers to know. This book really dives into a lot of things. Does not keep anything very general. It really, really goes into the nitty-gritty of that stuff. Analog signal. Look, so right from the introduction, camera input, digital signal processing, monitor output. It literally goes to the glue that holds all this together, makes it happen. All that stuff as far as that goes. And again, I'm just going to flip through this pages just to give you more of a grasp of what's going on in here. So there's, normal saturation. So if you're looking at doing color grading or shading for cameras, color bars in parity mode, video scenes in parity. So again, very visual references with cues, description, visible light spectrum here, kind of a breakdown of all that. Highly recommend this book as well if you are looking to be a video guy, getting your feet wet. And this book for me personally was a good read because a lot of the troubleshooting I go to comes from some of this. And there's a couple other books I have that are similar to this. But a lot of your troubleshooting needs to come from some kind of foundational knowledge. And that's what I'll call it for tonight. We'll call it foundational knowledge. It needs to come from these types of books where, hey, it could be X, Y, Z. Let's troubleshoot that scenario versus just always completely replacing things. I understand for corporate AV and for live events, a lot of stuff get tested out ahead of time and things happen. Things just die out and it's faster to swap it out. I get that. If you have the time to go back and troubleshoot it, though, this is a really good place to start, especially when you don't always have a tester on you for video. Some of those pieces of equipment are very expensive. If you're a freelancer or an independent contractor, most likely you may have one or two things for a certain thing like HDMI or SDI. You may not have the full gamut of stuff, so you don't always have that feedback. But if you're a media server guy, screen switcher, video switcher, there is stuff you can take from this that applies to what you're doing that you can use for troubleshooting in your mind about possible scenarios, what could be happening. Also, like just little things about hooking up your PowerPoints and your Playback Pro systems. That little, that HDMI cable might be 25 feet. Maybe it's directional, maybe it's not directional. Why is that? There's also a book I have for that as well that dives deep in the HDMI. If we pull out today, we'll talk about it a little bit. But again, so How Video Works, 3rd edition is the one that I have. Really, really good book. Highly recommend it. Again, very good for foundational knowledge in video. If you really want to fine tune kind of that troubleshooting process, all the information here is great. I use it all the time. It's definitely more of if I had all this gear to test things, I could verify it. But if I'm on the job site, I can make educated guesses that will get me to a solution much quicker than if I'm just like, it's not working, I don't know, move on, right? We always want to find that solution and move forward with it. So another book I recommend. And again, I'm just going to grab another one off the shelf here that I'm going to see real quick. So this book is actually pretty interesting. FIAF, Digital Projection Guide. This is an old book, mostly out of Europe. And this book talks a lot about cinema projectors. So what is D-Cinema and what are the alternatives? Pixels, the digital pixel element, the DCP file formats, digital projection systems, 3D projection technology, sound for digital cinema, and practical advice for digital conversions. This book, I was doing private screenings for the FIANA. and I was learning a lot about the cinema world. And this book kind of broke down a lot of things that I was trying to learn. So here you got some visuals of like a typical theater and the setup and where the audio would go. I just passed here a couple pages back. It's not how they do some of the testing and stuff for that. So you can see here's a very quick visual, sound for digital cinema and how that works in the rooms, how they do the acoustics. As I'm flipping through this, 3D, if you're doing 3D or IR glasses, how that works, how it gets implemented. The signal flow that happens for that gets talked about in here. When it comes to digital cinema or DCP file formats, that was kind of one of the bigger things I was dealing with. We were using a barcode projector, which they have a separate piece of software for that helps the DCP files run on a cinema projector. Very cool little booklet. If you're a projectionist and you want to kind of dive into projectors that may be in a different field but still have applications to you, this is a really good book. I would say this is very specific, though, to cinema. It gets into some of the nitty-gritties about, left eye versus right eye when you're doing visual projection, when you're doing the chipsets, the different ones to get different effects, resolutions for the cinema styles. It got into a little bit of nitty-gritty stuff when it came to history. Always like reading about some of its stuff. A lot of it's the same repeated information. So it's kind of just reformatted differently, but you can find most of the history of projectors online. Magic Lantern, the Luminary Brothers, things like that. And it does a little bit about a rundown of where they came from to where they are now, stuff about the lamps and things like that. Some stuff that other books have talked about. What's really cool in this book, and here's a chapter on it here, is they talk about, and I'll show you these pictures in a second, projector systems in particular, right? So when we're doing our stuff, some of the stuff to know is the DLP chips, right? Those chips that are internal and how they run. It gives you kind of a visual breakdown of that and talks about it in the sizing here. Texas Instruments is kind of a big part for projectors. But this gives you a very visual of LCOS, how the light comes through there with the prisms. Breaks that all down really well. So you have LCOS, you have color splitting prisms, and you have the light source for diachromatic mirrors and how those all really work. Which that's really cool to know for different projectors. If you are doing coloring for projectors, that is really good to know. If like barcodes, for example, are more red because of this reason versus lasers are more blue because of this reason. This kind of breaks down into some of that. There's a lot of things in here that I don't use, unfortunately, because I'm not a cinema guy. But again, FIAF Digital Projection Guide. It's a good book. It's primarily out of Europe, not so much in the US, but a very good book for projections if you guys want to learn and advance your career and go forward. So we're about 16 minutes in. We've gone through 3 books so far. I just want to reiterate, if you guys are watching me tonight and you have your own books, leave that in the comment. Or if you want to join me tonight, I'm going to once again post that. You're more than welcome to jump on the show with me tonight and post this. I'm posting the link there for you guys to jump on tonight with me if you want to. I'm going to go and grab another book on the shelf here. See what we got. I got a ton of books to go through. We may get through them all today. We may not. So there might be a part 2 to this. But if you just give me 1 second, I want to grab another book. And we'll talk about that one and what my thoughts are about that. So as you can see, the next book I bought is from the same company, but a different part of it. So it's called the Advanced Projection Manual. This book was actually really, really cool to read. It dove into a lot of that stuff I was saying, like the history of pretty much everything in projections. This thing dove into, why we do things the way we do with the math, as far as the furthest viewer, the lighting, the chips, the film that gets used, the history of that, aspect ratios, resolutions, where those came from, how they came about, how the refresh rate came into play between the different places like PAL, NTSC, why those all came into effect, how audio is embedded into all these things, formatting for the sound, formatting for frame rates, how projectors are built and for what reasonings. This got into a lot of the nitty-gritty kind of engineering side of things and really dove deep into projectors. Again, majority for the cinema side, but as you can see here, here's a wire diagram of the inside of a projector. Again, primarily for the cinema side, but this book really just dove into a lot of nitty-gritty. So again, the advanced side, I would say I use a lot of this stuff in my mind. I don't use a lot of this in the field. But what this book has really done is when I'm doing projectors, it gives me I have a broader understanding of what it has taken to get to where we are now in the industry, and I have a much broader understanding and respect for the process that happens. There are a lot of things that video does in general that are much smarter people than me, but people that have figured out ways to trick the eye to see what we want it to see, right? So like, for example, a projected screen has a black border. that isn't just like a random thing. The reason that there's a border is to give your brain the perception of what true black is, so that you can see a contrast ratio that is darker to your mind than what is really there, right? Because a light source is a light source. You can never get true black. However, because your mind has a reference to a true black, essentially, right, which is a border, you're able to see better contrast of images on the screen. Just like our eyes, if you guys didn't know this, if you look at a screen long enough, which is why coloring is so difficult for people, and a lot of us, myself included, will take our cameras out, we have a color on there, put it on the screen, and we'll double check everything and make sure it's good, because our eyes do adjust very quickly, right? It's a living organism. It's part of what we do. It adjusts very quickly, and it will color balance things for us. If they're completely off or different, we'll see that, and the eye can only do so much. But there's ways around that, and people figured it out. Another thing this book is really cool at doing with color balancing is kind of explaining the difference between doing a color balance and how color is used. So, for example, a lot of the more senior projectionists who have been doing this for a long time, they'll color balance by changing the light output versus actually doing a color balance. 3 color, 6 color, 8 color, I think are the main ones. There's actually a way to, by changing the intensity of the light, it can change the color for you. Again, a more advanced process, maybe not, but this book kind of dives into that a little bit as well. And again, the focus is on the cinema side, but that information still applies to what we do in the corporate AV and the live events industry. So it's a lot of good practical knowledge. Again, it's called the Advanced Projection Manual. It's sold primarily on the European side, so it is translated from a different language to the U.S. language. Very good read. It took me a while, man. It was about 300-something pages. It took me a while, but definitely not the smallest book or the biggest book I've read. There's way bigger books with many more pages. We'll get into down the road here. I'm going to pull out one of these files up top here. If you guys are seeing these in the top here, these are some free ones you can find online that Daylight came out with. I'm actually going to double check, make sure. So this is a really good book. I read this book years ago when I was trying to become a better video guy in general. I spent 6 years. If you guys don't know, I spent 6 years with a company called Media Stage in South Florida, kind of learning the ropes of what was happening, what was going on. And in order to be the V1 in that company at the time, I needed to learn everything: projection, switching, cameras, LED, screen, how to maintain, how to QC, how to do all these things. And a lot of that knowledge I got was from, scouring the internet. And 15 years ago, it was very scarce. So if you guys look up from Daylight, angles of reflection, I'll put that up there. Angles of reflection from Daylight. This is a free online source. Let me double check here. This is about 100 and something pages. But what this goes about into is screens and the history of screens, the history of Daylight, how they came from literally a paint on to, originally it was like glass bead drops. It was a paint on, right? Originally it was a paint company you paint on and project these projectors back in the day, these lumen projectors, which was just a light source, a candle in a dark room with a reflective material on it. And they had literally silver kind of in it to give it a reflective surface. Then they went to beads, these little tiny glass beads, to get more light to come back, to bounce off these screens, right? And then that kind of advanced and how they advanced the technology and how now it's on a macro level that, you hit this and the angle of that light bounce off goes a certain direction. And the way the projector hits the screen in particular is how that bounce off happens. So there's a correlation between the screen gain that you have and the projector lumens you have and how much bounce back you get. So you always get some kind of loss, but depending on the screen surface you have, whether it's a gray screen, a white screen, those have different effects to the projector you're using. So there is like a formula in here that if I have a 20K projector at a +3 gain, directly going on for front projection, I'll get the most bounce back. I'll get 95% to 98% of my bounce back. My angle of view, though, after, depending on how big the screen is, which again, there's formulas in here for that. Let's say the screen's at 16:9. After about 60 degrees, that light off will fall because that viewing angle is too far over for the bounce off to happen. And this breaks all that stuff down, breaks down why we do screens the way we do them, why they get built the way they get built. Again, the knowledge I said earlier about why screens have the black border is from this book in particular, one of 2 books that they have. This also goes over a few things about, again, that kind of the tricks of the trade of why we do things the way we do them, right? It's like, for example, a moving image is X amount of frames at a certain speed, right? So 24 was that original go-to, which is how fast a human could spin these silhouette images on a Ferris wheel. So if you guys remember those back in the day, a long time ago, a lot of these books go into that. you would spin it really fast. It would go about 24 RPMs. So you get that original frame rate of motion, right? So that was enough speed of enough pictures in motion at that speed gave us the illusion in our eyes of what a moving image was. We took that and we expanded on it, and then we did 59.4. The 9.4, that little change of difference was for audio to be embedded down copper, and now we're at 120 hertz refresh rates, and it's for gaming, things like that. All those things are from learning from these books and reading them. This is really just all about screens. I will say this one was a much harder read. Obviously, screens are not super entertaining in any shape or form, but the knowledge that needed to be there was great. So again, this book is called Angles of Reflection. I'll show it up here real quick. Angles of Reflection, and it's by Daylight. It is a free ebook that's online. Again, if you're a projectionist and you want to keep diving into this stuff, or you're a video engineer and you just want to expand what you know, great book to do this. This one goes to 2011, so there might be even a more updated one. So this was from 2007, 2011. Ambient transmission on reflection, uniformity, brightness versus contrast, reflection brilliance, wider is better, question mark. Too close for comfort, question mark. And now some of these probably that now have been updated. If you think about ultra short throw projector lenses, like Panasonic has these ultra short throws, how those are affected. I'm sure that's probably different between rear and front. And there is actually physical, like if you're doing this much of lumens and you do this screen gain, you would get this much bounce back. That's in these books. So again, if you're in that Vectorworks side, that planning side, and really want to maximize what you're doing or give the best possible outcome, highly recommend this book. I'll go back to a more traditional book here now instead of doing another one of these. By the way, a lot of these free ebooks and things like that you can find on the AV Educate group page. If you guys don't follow that, there's a file section, and in that file section, there's tons of downloads. That one and its companion book are both in there. Highly recommend it if you guys want. Download it, print it out. I like to print out and read it. I'm not a fan of reading on my phone or the computer too much, even though there's a couple books in Emotion now that I'm reading in that format because I haven't printed it out yet. So I'm halfway through a couple of those. I will be printing them out. It's more of a timing issue right now. Talk about something more current and more up to date right now. If you are looking at VR or virtual productions, there's a book called Tips and Techniques for Filmmakers, the Cinematic VR Field Guide. I'm reading this book. This is more about that stereoscopic filming of stuff. The author here does a very good job of explaining the pros and cons, the pros and cons of this new medium, how it gets used, how it's been being used, and kind of where he sees it going in the future, and how this is being implemented very much into VR. So if you're looking to dive into that VR, that VPS kind of virtual production workflow, not exactly in that realm. It's more for the camera operators, but still within the realm of what needs to happen on the disguise side or the the Unreal Engine side, that creation part of it, and how these kind of get married together, which is a very good read to read. Is this little book called the Cinema VR Field Guide, Tips and Tricks for Filmmakers. This is a gentleman who's been doing it for a long time. He's in the field. He works with a bunch of filmmakers. He's got some feedback from them. He's got his own take on things. Again, I just started reading it. I'm about let's see where my mark is, right? I'm halfway through the book, so a little less than halfway through the book. This book is, well, this is the index, so let's not count the index. Let's not count references. Let's not count resources. This book is about 126 pages, and I'm on page 48. So I just started this last week. So far, it's been an interesting read. It's again one of those things where I try to read as much as I can, but it's just been interesting. Again, the Cinema VR Field Guide. So if you're looking for that virtual production kind of VR intro to that world and start getting ahead of the game, this is a good book to kind of get yourself in there and understanding stereoscopic and how that works and what's the relationship between that and the LED walls, the relation to that and the cameras, and how they all play together and the possibilities that can happen with that. So far, it's been a good read. It's been a little bit, the first chapter is a little bit different. He kind of explains why he wrote the book, what the book purpose is for, and where it's going. Once you get past that chapter, it starts to dive into a little bit of the nitty gritty of things. Not too much. He makes it very clear, by the way, if you guys aren't very technically savvy and you're still new, this book is probably a good pickup as well, because it doesn't dive too deep into the technical stuff. It dives more into that surface level information where it's like, this is what's happening in the background, right? Versus if you did this lens with this at this f-stop at this, ISO, you would get this result. So it doesn't dive into that deep. It's more of that surface level. You use these cameras to do this effect. These things affect this look. This affects this look. But so far, it's been like it says, tips and techniques that I think are, down the road. Eventually, I will be able to have a conversation with somebody who does it more frequently and be able to keep up the conversation. So again, we are 30 minutes into this podcast. We're talking about books. If you guys weren't aware, we're talking about books that I have here in the back. If you guys have your own books that you've read that I haven't talked about or that you want to recommend to the community, put them down in the comments here. I'll gladly talk about them live or mention them real quick here. I'll give you credit as well for that. And then maybe we can find an author and bring them on the back end. I'm going to grab another book here and keep going. And again, if you guys want to join me tonight, you're more than welcome to join the podcast and get on with me and talk about books in general. And if you have your own maybe story about something that you want to talk about. If you guys weren't, we have a book that we talked about from Clem Harrod, who did a book called Career Projection 101, the guide. And it's actually in a frame right now that needs to get redone because what I had it posted with got messed up. So I'm going to show you this. Clem, if you're watching, don't get upset with me. We talked about this. So this is a signed copy of Clem's book. I have a weird thing. I typically don't show people this. I have a lot of books. I read a lot. Obviously, I have some here. I have some books that are framed because they're signed to me directly. So I frame those because they're more important to me because they have a signature for me. Career Projection 101 Guide by Clem Harrod is a good book if you are in the industry. If you're starting the industry and you want like a little intro to exit strategy for your career, that's the book you want to read. Also, Clem has Clemco HR, which can also help you go from, hey, I read this, I have the knowledge to do this, I want to set this up, to I need someone to maintain it for me and help me with this process. There's a whole avenue to go in that book. Very good book. I won't go into that. There's a podcast on it. If you want to learn more about it, drop me a comment and I'll send you a message on it of where that podcast is. It's on YouTube and Facebook. But I'll give you a direct link to that. Just leave me a comment and I will directly message you that particular video. It's an hour long. Clem talks a lot about it. We dive into a couple of different things. So I'm gonna go grab another book. Again, if you guys want to join me for tonight's session, the link is there to join me. And yeah. So let's see. All right, so here's an old book. I got this book. This is a lighting book. All right, photometrics. This is a lighting book, second edition handbook. There's a series of these books that are written in conjunction with another book that I should really find to show you at the same time. Sorry, I'm going to jump here because I'm a big fan of this book. And I wish, from my understanding, the author has passed away. I wish I could get this gentleman on the show with us and talk about it. But if you are brand new to the industry, if you are been in the industry for 10 years, I recommend you buy this book and give it to somebody in the industry. Pay it forward, give them a head start. This was one of the first books I ever read when I joined the industry, and it was probably the best book to ever read. And it's called and a lot of you might know this book. So like some of you might not be surprised. Some of you that haven't heard this book will be surprised, but it's called The Backstage Handbook. This is an illustrated almanac of technical information, and it is just awesome the way it's laid out. I'm a real fan of this book, and I'm gonna show you this on the vlog here, right? So I'm gonna flip through some of these, and I'm just gonna flip through some of these pages, right? So here is a visual representation of wrenches and screwdrivers. So here's a crescent, C or adjustable wrench, and an image, an illustration of what that is, right? Folding hex or Allen keys and an image, channel locks and an image. Like that makes it so simple. Because if I told you, hey, I need a monkey wrench, which is a slang term in Miami, you might not know what that is. But if you had this book and you read this book and you referenced it with you and you brought it to show sites to just jog your memory sometimes, I had this book on me for about a year. And I would try to remember as much as I could on a show site I didn't know, and I'd go back to this book and find stuff, And again, I'm flipping your pages here, right? So, pneumatic tools, again, verbiage and imagery. I'm gonna keep going. Welding tools, and then here's what's even cool. So it's not just a bunch of. It's not like a kid's book for adults, right? It's not just images of the words. It actually gets into. So here's welding electrodes for mild steel. So the number you need, the description, the current range or amps, it's all laid out here for what you need to do. So if I was doing welding and I had a occidental torch and tips, which I don't do anything with welding, There are 4 main ones you can use: E7018, E7014, E613. So E613, general purpose welding, produces a soft arc. I mean, I don't know all of that, what that means, but that gets me ahead of the game, and I can have a conversation. I can be not completely ignorant to what's going on. So here we got Elias Morales. Backstage Handbook is a great reference, especially for those getting started on the carpentry / select construction side of things. Yeah, so this book goes over that as well. It goes over drape, goes over the names of drape, goes over carpentry, goes over. So in the back here, which I used to use a lot, right? We got stage direction. Oh, this is a big one right here. Stage direction. How many times do you guys talk about this on show site? What's what goes where? Stage direction, upstage, downstage, right, left, down, left, down, right. I mean, this goes over all the time. So sorry, turn the page here. I'm trying to get to what you were talking about. Where's it at? There, here you go. So here's some, nope, that's still something. Sorry. I'm trying to find it. I'm doing this on the fly. So here we go. USET Scenic Design Graphics Standards. So here's a bunch of scenic design graphic standards from USET in the book, ready for you to look at with all the information. 5.52 last cleats, brace cleats, some images of that, what they are, some images here. There's also, see this, I used to use this a lot with my father, who builds a lot of stage stuff. So here is, if you guys ever have a solid wall or anything in AV, here's kind of the recommended setup. And again, visually, what it looks like, where everything's going, and then notes. So toggle speech every 2 feet, face with lumen, 1/4 plywood, plain flat, door flat, cats optional. So like, here it is. You don't have to figure this stuff out. The drape stuff's here. And this goes into, look, power. Power's in here, L630, L620, regular power, AC 20 amps, 10 amps, with visual representation of what that is. 20 amp, 125, 250 volts, XW, where there are on the channel where it's supposed to be connected to. There's also a page here. Again, that's why I love this book. So I'm going to distance here. Distance. Oh, look. So distance for power, slide projectors. Oh, sorry. That's not what I was looking for. Lamp sheets, power, hand. There is. Here's more power. More power. I know it's in here. So this book has, I'm going to find it for you. It's going to drive me nuts. Analog, recording tape, length, show. Oh, here we go. Shop math. All the math you need for everything. Well, almost everything. But again, power, video, audio, a couple of things like that. So identifiers, wire gauging, electrical, anything you need in the aviation industry in any department, theater, production, all of that stuff. Hey, Kent, thanks for tuning in, man. I appreciate it. Again, just to give a recap, everybody, we were talking about books today. Right now, we're talking about the Backstage Handbook, Illustrated Almanac. Again, if super good book, super useful, just diving into it. And I'm just showing you like this amazing book, my first book ever. If you're in theater, highly recommend it. If you're in corporate AV, live events, highly recommend it. There's knots in here, notes on how to do them. This thing just goes down to so many things. Materials, all the things you would need, all the names, the verbiage, the lengths, the math. I mean, it's all here. This is a super good book. I highly recommend it. This book in conjunction to the series. Sorry, there's another book that I got, which is what we started with first, called Photometrics, which we're going to dive into in a second. So if you're a lighting person, again, visual with also descriptions, not written in the same format, so a little bit different. But so I got this book because I was trying to figure out the fallout rate, and I believe, if memory serves, it's called square law theory, and it's for every 4 feet you lose lumens. And there's a formula for this, depending, like if I have a 20 lumen projector and I'm 30 feet away, there's a simple formula to put those things in, and I believe it is called square law theory. Every 4 feet you lose like 2 lumens is the math. But I bought this hoping to learn more about that. I did learn more about lensing and lights coming out, essentially. Not so much for the projector side, but more on the lighting side. But what's really cool about this book is, and again, this is very somewhat old, so a lot of this stuff may not be always in use. And I know we've done things now with LECO, so the math might not be the same anymore. It might have changed a lot. But if you were a lighting guy and you wanted to just, again, improve your stuff, here's a Fresnel 3 lens, spot focus, dimmer, foot candles, flood focus, and the measurements for that. And then distance, and how to figure that out. Again, I'll turn the page here. More Fresnels for different shapes and lengths, model numbers, And this book, I mean, dives into all this stuff. So some of the stuff I skipped through. I'm not a Latin guy. Didn't interest me. But it's good to reference it when I was in a position where I could. So when I was in the warehouse originally as a QC guy, it was good to have this at the original time with Licos. But again, it goes over all that, and then yeah, just look, spotlights, follow, distance, goes over all of this. So all the lensings, the different types of lensings, the photometric charts, the math you need to have, it's all in here. And this is, again, it's called Photometrics Second Edition. So there might be a newer one out there. This is a second edition called Photometrics. Big fan of this book. I've been a fan of this book for a long time. Again, I glanced most of it. I got what I needed out of it, which is the math, the formulas I needed for projectors to try to do a cross comparison. It wasn't exactly the same, so I ended up not using it for a long time. But I believe it is called Square Law Theory. I got it from the book originally. It didn't exactly cross over, and now that we went to lasers, that's changed completely. So there used to be this thing where if you had let's say this is your projected cone and you're coming out of a lens, if you were dead center, you got 100% of your lumens. And this is another term, I can't remember the name right now. It was this: if you went down, shifted downwards 20%, right? And this goes back to that older mentality about doing anything by the optics. So if you had shifted down 20%, you lost X amount percent of the brightness because you're now moving that center force where the light's coming out of, right? So here's my light source, which is the sun, essentially, let's say, because light is a 360 expansion, right? And we are in projectors forcing it to go into this rectangle through prisms to come out on the other end as a rectangle shape, right? Which is not what it's meant to do. And that also has to be aligned. So that front of the projector has to be aligned with the lens like this. If I go this way, I'm now not getting full length of my lumens output. That is now changed. And the further away I go from that, the dimmer that image becomes, and that affects my brightness. And there was a ratio to that, and it could be up to 50% back in the day if you went all the way to the top of your lens. So that's not as accurate anymore with lasers that have come out, and some of the technology has advanced a little bit where it's been able to kind of manipulate and move itself to make that work. But eventually that's where I got the information from. And again, I came from a Barco house back in the day where it was all lamp-based and arc lamps. So the more I knew, the better I could do my job, essentially. So Ed's saving the day. It's called Inverse Square Law. That's what it is. Inverse Square Law. Thank you, Ed. Always saving the day. Horrible names and stuff, but that's what it is. Inverse Square Law. Inverse square law applies in audio as well. Ed's saying this, by the way, Ed Wallach. Inverse square law applies in audio as well for calculating the reduction in volume over distance. So yeah, universal math there. That one still applies for projectors, not as much with lasers because there's been some changes for that and how the actual light comes through with the chipsets and the lenses move now together. It's a little bit different. Essentially now lenses are moving more in a circular pattern, up and down, left and right, but within the circle to keep within that range of the light source that comes out. But again, the brightest you'll get is to be dead centered on, centered focus. Not always the case. You move things around, but your drop off is not as great as it used to be. It's much, 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 much less because of the advances in technology. But 15 years ago, this was totally a thing with lamp-based projectors. If you're still using lamp-based projectors, it is something to keep in mind now if you think about it. And you're welcome to test the theory out. Literally just take a projector, lens, shoot it straight, and then lens shift it all the way up and see if you get the same brightness on that screen or not. And you will see a notable difference. It used to be much more noticeable back in the day. But again, technology advanced so much now that it's not as noticeable and it's not as big a deal anymore. So there's a little more plug and play, wiggle room for what that is. But I got that early from this one. So again, I'll move on to the next book here. I also have non-AV books, so I'm trying to be specifically when I pull things out. Okay, so here's one. This one's called Video Encoding by the Numbers. I did editing for a while. I was trying to get really nitty gritty into the codex of things. And this book goes into that. So Video Encoding by the Numbers, really, really good book. Again, I'll roll through a couple of these pages and see if I can show you some of the diagrams here. So high quality versus low quality, contrast rate factor for encoding, CRC. So you can see some of those graphs that were made there in comparison to that stuff. This dives into the actual file formats, right? So lossless, when you're doing lossless, better, worse, like that compression rate. I'm trying to show you guys a graph that makes sense. So here's 1080p resolution, and here's the overall effect that happens at different refresh rates, right? So if I do 1080p at these refresh rates, 24 or 30, right, through these descriptions, I lose X amount of pixels on that conversion rate. This dives deep into all these things with colors, with conversion rates, 720p files. Again, another graph with that showing the fall off, doing things in MP4, MOV, H.264, 422, 441, 444, how all these little things affect and what the codec is doing at that point when we're compressing stuff. When we're compressing a packet to, let's say we're doing a zip to then unzip it on the other end, how that actually affects the quality on the other end. That's an issue. And it's, this again goes on. So for example, in the IT world, this book doesn't go over that. So the H.264, hold on, I just passed it. H.264 encoders are not created equal. So here's like a breakdown. So here's H.264 encoders are not created equal, right? Here's literally a breakdown of a chart between, if I do H.264 on a DivX file versus a XVID file, and how that quality is different between 137% difference to a 93% difference from the original recording of an H.264. So H.264 is a file conversion format. This literally breaks down to individual, like, okay, if you did it at this with this, it changes it to this. And this gets into so many things that I honestly, I don't remember a lot of it. I do have an understanding of this. When I do editing stuff, if I need to, I refer to this. Encoding quality by X264 presets. If you guys are doing video stuff and you're looking at Rec 709 or some of the other ones, this kind of goes into that a little bit as well. This book was super useful when I was doing more post-production. I don't do so much now post-production because of this, not because of this book in particular, but because of the knowledge I gained from this book. There's a lot of things I wasn't doing to the best of my abilities, and it became very clear in this book. But if you're a post-production guy, video encoding by the numbers, this will give you a lot of just that kind of fundamental knowledge, like I keep saying, right, about what you're doing, how you're compressing it, how that's affecting the quality of what you're doing, how the monitor is affecting it, the color space you're doing it isn't affecting it, how the way you're transferring it affects it all. All those things kind of add up, especially when you're in a position where you are constantly contacting your client through other sources, like not in person. They're not with you in your home or your studio, looking at the same monitor you're looking at, and they might see artifacts like that. And it could be, well, I converted to this. How did you transfer it from your system to that system? And it could be, oh, well, we downgraded to MOV and then went that way. Oh, well, it was a 4K quality image. You just destroyed all the quality of that, and that's why there's artifact there, or that's why it looks the way it looks. Like versus you should have contacted me to send it out. I would have sent it out at a higher bit rate. Things like that you learn from this book, and you learn ways to do things better or to help compensate for things. There are ways to unpackage certain file formats that are better than others. Honestly, if you are in that field, Handbrake is just a useful tool to use. It works really well, and for the most 9% of what we're doing, it's on the fly. It gets it where it needs to go, and most people aren't noticing those things. When you're on a higher level show and you have a couple of days of prep, a couple of days of rehearsals, those things matter, and those could be the difference between I don't know what's going on to, you know what, I think I can figure this. I think I have an answer for you. Let me look at this real quick. The fact that I know how things can happen sometimes is where I'm able to say something to a client, hey, I see what you're talking about. Let me look at some things real fast, and I can go look at, okay, here's the file format, and I can ask, hey, what was this originally sent as? What's going on with that? And I might have some leeway there to say, well, can we get the original from this person because that would probably be better quality, or we're getting that because of this conversion right here. There's some stuff that sticks in there in general. Obviously, converting from a higher res to lower res causes some issues. There are some things, for example, like if you're doing a PowerPoint, here's an example. If you guys don't do this, here's a little tip for the industry. If you guys have graphics operators and you have a looping deck, essentially, right, for let's say a walkthrough or something that's playing in the background that needs to play because you're in sessions, you're in between sessions, or an intro thing that just loops until you go to your main session, you can actually export that as a video file from PowerPoint. That file is a MP4. So right there, you're limited to that. It also takes away a lot of the effects. Not all of them. You can still have fade and a couple things like that. Some of the transitional effects, though, like built-in slide stuff, that doesn't always transfer through completely. What will happen, though, is that it will show like a glitch that's happening that looks like a skip or something like that on the video side because it knows something's supposed to happen there, but it didn't export that properly. There's also if for another one that's happened to me in the past is we did a deck like that on the fly without getting to really review it. And what happened was the background was a background layer in front of context. There was literally 1 pixel shift down of that background on a couple of the slides. And because when you click on the background, it gets highlighted, the border gets highlighted so you can resize it, essentially. We didn't catch it. And I didn't see it until after we started seeing the video play a couple of times. It would randomly, what we thought was random was not random. It would on certain slides, because now it's a video, it would do like a flickering scenario because the top had a white pixel. So it was like a darkish blue background. And it was doing a fade, but when it did the fade, because it was from a dip, to the next one, and it went from an all black to white, it looked like it flickered for a second, but just like a frame. So we thought we were having frame drops essentially from the playback system to the switcher, or something was being processed or modulated at some point. And it was causing this flicker to happen because it's only on that one particular video. In between sessions, I got to look at it and I saw that it was that 1 pixel, moved it up on the slides that had the problems, re-exported it out as an MOV, as MP4, and boom, it played fine, no problems after that. So again, little things like that you got to catch. But if you know about MP4 and formats and how they get changed, you know that's not an issue of the MP4 itself. MP4 is more of a compression of the quality and the depth of the depth of the video quality itself. And when you're doing post-production, not so much of the actual flickering. That's a separate scenario, right? But knowing that those 2 separate things helps you troubleshoot in the right direction versus just chasing your tail or just guessing at what's going on. So things to think about on the road. Again, I read this book a couple years ago when I was in college, 2006 when I graduated, 2007. No, sorry. I graduated high school in 2006. 2011 or 12 is when I graduated college. No, that's not right either. 6 years ago is when I graduated college. I left the military in 2011. Sorry. A lot going on here. Read that book when I was in college, my second time in college. I was doing a lot of post-production work for that time for a video production course. And there was just so many questions I had about things that they weren't answering because it wasn't particular, but I wanted to dive in deeper. And I got this book in reference to that. Anyways, moving on. This book, the Television Production Handbook, 11th edition, was when I was in college. It was actually given to me as one of my curriculums. This was probably my favorite class. It was for broadcast. It was for broadcast, but that class in particular had 2 A&G cameras, maybe 3 cameras, a switcher, a graphics machine, and a playback machine, and a record playback graphics. It had like a broadcast version of what we do in live and corporate events. So that class was super interesting to me. This is the book that they gave us. I gotta say, at the time, I didn't really learn anything from this book. I had been doing AV for, man, that was the classroom. I mean, not the exact classroom, but that was like what the classroom was like. So like this kind of setup. This is what the classroom was like. Cameras, white background, do whatever you want in there. We had a little setup done. I won't say the book was not complete. So here, look, large production switcher. I mean, just like, talked about wipes and stuff. Like, no, I don't even know who uses that wipe, but it's a good book. If you're doing video and you want to learn about the switching side of stuff or the engineering side, I like these visuals. I'm a big visual person, obviously. These visuals about different things and angles and positions and different stuff. Like that was interesting to read just to get like a confirmation of what's what and what goes into where. A lot of terminology was in this book. There's actually another book I'll find after this that I got in the bookshop at college that I thought was really, really cool. It helped me out a lot when I was doing camera work. But this book in general kind of goes over that video switching department, right? So if you're a video switching guy and you want to learn more about video cameras and how to switch them and timing and processing and things to think about when you're in that position, that book kind of covers all that. The class that I did covered all of that as well. So, in conjunction with this, but this book is good for that. So again, if you're looking at being a video camera switcher, a camera operator, or camera director, this book dives into a little bit of all of that. Super useful. Super good. This obviously was 2010 through 2020 kind of range. So it might be a little bit outdated at this point, but the Television Production Handbook, super good book, super useful, super knowledgeable stuff in there. If you're, again, new to the industry, I'd been in the industry for about 4 years at the time. In order to get to that V1 position, I needed to have at the company a college degree that was specific to the AV industry. My original degree was in exercise kinesiology. which wasn't specific. So I couldn't get the position I wanted, essentially. So did a 2-year course, literally took all Wednesday, all day doing classes, and then one class on Thursday nights or, whatever it was. And I'd work double shifts on the weekends with my company in order to kind of maintain all this. It was a crazy 2 years, but I did that, got my degree. I loved the program. It was really cool. Got to learn a lot of different things, a lot of different ways. But that was cool. There's another book, man. There's another book, and I want to find it quickly for you guys. Sorry, just give me 1 second. So there's a book. I'm gonna try to talk as loud as I can. We got about 5 minutes left, so we'll probably do a part 2 of this a little bit down the road. But there's another book I have about cameras in particular and shots, and I can't. Oh man, it is somewhere. It is somewhere. It's got to be on the other side of this wall over here, which is another bookshelf about the same size. I'm going to talk about it real quick because of running out of time here. We got 5 minutes left. I'm going to talk about it real quick. So this book was literally all about different shot angles. And again, what I liked about it was that this book is all about, this book was visual. So it was like, hey, a close-up shot should be this, right? A medium shot should be this. A wide shot should be, knees and above. An ultra wide should be the whole body's in that shot. And again, this is preferences and things you can go over with your team as you're on your own. But I'll talk about dolly shots, pans, different kind of pans you can do, effects you can do with moving the camera and zooming at the same time, right? There's certain horror films that use this effect. Again, if anybody's watching remembers the name of this, there's an effect you can do that it was coined by a director that you move the camera backwards and you zoom in at the same time. If you do this timing correctly, it gives this very eerie vibe because it's not something that happens in normal. So the person stays kind of in center while the image in the background either comes away or comes closer. If you time this properly, it causes a weird kind of trippy effect to the mind, right? Again, tricking the mind, which is very cool. The book dives into that a little bit, shows a very visual thing of that. Talks about different angles and shows, again, visuals. So if like most of us, when we're doing streaming, we're doing a head-on shot. You want to watch your headroom, things like that. Talks about headroom. Talks about nose room, right? So if I'm going this way, I need more nose room, right? I need to be centered here because I'm at the edge of a wall, right? Because nothing exists past this for you, the audience, edge of the wall, right? So we call this nose room, right? If I keep going this way, I'm off the frame. Other and diversity, right? But if I face this way, this way, and I come this way, I'm now too far off frame, and I need the camera to move and recenter me back to the middle. And again, it talks about these things, and it shows you a very visual explanation of that. Also talks about if I'm doing a shot and I'm looking down at the audience, right? If this camera was further down, I was looking down onto you, it gives the audience the impression, and it shows you what the shot looks like, that you're being looked down upon. So a giant, a big person, or maybe if you're a little person, you're looking up at somebody, that angle goes that way. If you want to give the audience a dominating position, right, where you are dominating that person, you want to be above them, looking down onto them. Vice versa. If you want to do a sneaking shot, right, getting something in between yourself and the foreground. So let's say you're doing a shot and you want people to understand that, hey, someone's being watched, right? You might put the camera behind some leaves or behind a window to show the main actor, or in between like a doorway, so that when they walk by, they see that, and you're like, oh, I'm looking for the perception of the intruder or the villain or the peeper, whatever the case is, right? You can use cameras in certain ways to communicate to the audience what's happening. And again, the book goes through some of that and does visuals of that. Like it could look like this, it could look like that. For corporate AV, we kind of do only 3 to 4 shots. We keep them kind of there. We do this, but it goes over, pan, tilt, zoom, rack focus, gives you again a visual of that, shows you a little camera, and like this is this way, this left and right means this, up and down means this. The actual verbiage for that, I don't want to give it away because I've been giving away pan and tilt, but it's all visual, so it's very like it connects the dots for us. And my thing about a lot of these books is a lot of times we read them, and if you're not in the industry, you don't know what's what. So it's hard to say, hey, I'm going to go through a mouse hole, right? You might think in your mind, Tom and Jerry back in the day had a mouse hole, and it's like, no, this is just a circle. It's got a cover on it, and we just run cables through it. We called it a mouse hole, but it's not a mouse hole, right? Or a C wrench, right? You might think something else versus what we're talking about. Or like I said, monkey wrench, right? It's a slang we use in Miami. So things like that are very good to with the visuals and the verbiage that just ties it all together. I will find that book for the next time. So we are about a minute out, 60 seconds. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. I really appreciate it. Again, if you guys have any comments, anything you want to leave last minute, please drop them in the comments here below. If you're still here with me and you haven't put a book out there yet, let me know what the book is. I'd love to dive into it. If you guys know a book we should talk about or an author that's written a book, love to put them on the show, get them involved with us. Like I said, we've done a couple books already with John Huntington, which is Show Networking. He wrote the book on it for pretty much the AV industry. There's a great explanation about IT. Really, really good book if you're into the stream world right now to read to get you up to speed about the IT side, or take a Dante class. If you're looking for career advice and looking to get more advanced on that, Clem Harrell's Career Projection 101 book is a great book to read. He's also got another book coming out right now that we're gonna have him on the show talking about soon. And again, just thanks for tuning in tonight with me. I really appreciate it. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Virtual Events. Everything they do for us to help us support the platform and get the stuff going. Again, we got so many more books to go through. I think we went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books. And I still got a whole bookshelf here and a whole bookshelf over there and a bunch of stuff in this drawer and a bunch of stuff in that drawer and a couple books upstairs in my bedroom. But we'll be going over these more. So again, thank you guys so much. Thanks for the hearts, the loves. Appreciate that. Thanks for the commenting and being involved. Again, one last thing before we go, run out of time, but I want to thank Virtual Events.